By the way, hold on, let me grab something real quick. Okay, so my dog, I bought him a new toy today that he really likes. So if you hear this in the background at some point, I'm sorry.
Oh my god. Jeez.
It's a
Oh my
Mr. Bill
gosh.
toy. It's a Mr. Bill dog toy. You remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, All right, so we have actually been getting a semi decent amount of feedback with pictures of water towers. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I did. I saw a couple of those.
I've I've been very excited. It's been pretty cool. I also noticed that people just started using "Show us your tower,"
Yes.
the hashtag, and also with A Town Tower. But I have to say, I like the "Show us your tower" better.
Yeah, it's better. It's just I mean, I guess we're not widespread enough for it to really cause any problems, but I could see that if that was a more like a bigger campaign from a bigger brand, I could see that being problematic.
I guess
Uh,
that's
but
true.
uh, but that's the only reason I pointed that out briefly last time.
Maybe we'll just leave it as yeah, either is an option. How about that?
Yeah, yeah,
I've
sounds good.
enjoyed seeing it. Also, I noticed that somebody like a couple years ago had actually used that hashtag. So every time I do the search for it, I see a couple random water towers from like 2014, which I find kind of funny.
Yeah, it's interesting because I didn't think that was something. It was kind of a gamble because I want. If you remember, like way back when we started this, I was like, "Hey, this is something we should talk about the water tower," and maybe like we kind of jokingly said like, "Hey, let's do like a hashtag thing." And then I think last week we decided to just go for it, and the fact that we've had any response with it is just kind of cool.
Yeah. Oh, I've been enjoying it.
Yeah, because it
So
is one of those things where every small town or someone that's lived even in a big town that has a water tower that's unique. It is kind of something that I think people kind of think is endearing. So
also, I have added water tower to my Google News feed as a section. So any interesting water tower news that comes up, we'll
we
probably have a
got
water
you.
tower corner in the future.
We have you covered.
Yes, this is the place for all of your water tower news.
Exactly. Can we call it the no spin zone? Is that still a copyright thing with him not being there
I
anymore?
assume that probably is somebody probably owns it. Also, not exactly a brand that you want to be associated with at this point.
Sorry, I don't know if you heard Mr. Bill in the background.
I thought I
You
heard
started
something, but I
talking
couldn't
and I
hear
heard, oh no. I might have to take that away from him.
It'll just be a fun little Easter egg. If you hear
Yeah,
Mr. Bill in the background, you'll always think of Mr. Frodo. I assume that's
right.
Mr. Frodo.
Yeah, Mr. Frodo's playing with Mr. Bill. Very formal household here.
So, how has your experiment with Reddit been? You created an account, right?
Yeah, after we were talking about it last week, I actually started one, and I haven't been going crazy with it or nothing, but I really like it. I
Yes.
did subscribe to that page, the Change My Mind thing. I haven't done anything on there. I just kind of looked through it, and it is very interesting.
Yeah. I'm just a lurker. I don't know that I've actually ever posted or joined in those, but I really enjoy reading them. That's changed my view.
Yeah, yeah. And then also I went to a couple of groups. They're like subreddits for like different book series and stuff like that
Yeah.
I've read. And
Cosmere. Yeah. I remembered it this time.
yeah, exactly. And I've posted a couple times to different ones like legit like technical questions about different books within different series that are all connected, and gotten some pretty good answers back. There's some like you kind of get the full breadth too. It's like some of them are like you can tell are people that might not get out much, but they like live for getting on these subreddits, and they're like, well, I think what you're actually talking about is and they'll like, but and there's a couple people like that both give me good answers and are like just saying weird, awkward things that I was not even remotely asking about.
What do you mean by that? Weird, awkward things?
Well, like for instance, I asked something about like a rules based thing in one of the worlds, and then it had something to do with like geography, and like there was a lot of people that were like answering me directly to what I was actually asking, and then this other person was like, well, in the real world this sort of geography phenomenon is called like such and such, and I think that's what you're after. And it's
I
like,
love that you give this person a total nerd voice.
yeah, well, it sounds like someone that's like really into engineering or geography and
Easy.
like or some subject or something like that, and
as
they're
you
tying
offend
that.
all of
No,
the
no, no, no. They shouldn't be offended, because it sounds like someone that's super into that but is trying to connect their real world experience to fantasy nonsense rules.
okay.
So, yeah, because it's a fantasy series, remember.
Right,
So
right.
that's
This
the thing is
reminds
it.
me of are you familiar with Stack Overflow?
No, that sounds familiar.
So, Stack Overflow is the beating heart of all software development. It's basically like a ask questions, get answers thing for software. And it's basically like nobody ever learns anything when it comes to building software anymore. You just look it up and you're almost always going to end up on Stack Overflow with an answer to whatever question you have on like a
Right.
syntax type thing, right? But that I think it started with Stack Overflow, but they've created a whole network, and I think it's called. I'm looking it up right now. I think it's called Stack Exchange.
Hmm.
I'm gonna find one and send you a link because I think you're going to like this. So there's a whole slew of versions of this that aren't technical. So like
Hmm.
for example, and I can't find it. There's a Stack Overflow for like Star Wars.
Oh, okay.
Again, it's not called Overflow, Stack Overflow. It's called something else. And it's bothering me that I can't find this. Oh, it is. It is Stack Exchange. So there's one called, it's not Star Wars, it's called Sci-Fi Stack Exchange. Let me send you, I'm just sending you a link to the science fiction and fantasy Stack Exchange right now.
Okay.
So like people ask these like detailed questions. So like the ones I'm looking at right now are like what happened to General Grievous's fighter?
Yeah.
And it's somebody asking specific questions about the like mechanics of how certain things in Star Wars happen,
Gotcha.
right?
Yeah, it's really
But some of these things, like I don't know if there's a way to find the top ones. So the whole reason I know this is because at work, like I said, you're frequently on Stack Overflow looking up, how do I format a date in UTC time with JavaScript if I have, some specific thing, right?
right.
Some weird technical question. But on the right, they have hot questions on Stack Exchange. And these questions will be things like, um, why couldn't Harry Potter just use this spell at this point in this
Yeah.
movie? And like every time, one of us will notice if we're like pairing together, and you click on it, and then you end up in this long, deep like discussion on the mechanics of why that actually makes sense and all the like physics within the Harry Potter world and everything. It's really fun.
Yeah, that actually yeah, I'm just looking through these ones for Star Wars, and it's very like, what is that tower outside Luke's house? Like
Yeah.
weird stuff like that. It's
Yeah,
interesting.
and there's like especially with Star Wars because Star Wars and Lord of the Rings both have like absurd mythologies and depth behind them.
Yeah.
Lord of the Rings because J.R.R. Tolkien was deep, and Star Wars because it's been farmed out to so many different authors over time that it has ridiculously deep or I guess canon, but also even side canon. What are those called? There's like legacy canon and all those other
Oh,
things.
yeah, yeah.
I'm sure there's a Stack Exchange answer for that.
The legends, it's now legends. I'd normally use Wikipedia for stuff like that, but yeah, for more technical stuff, I could see this being very interesting.
Well, and I've never posted a question, and honestly, like I couldn't even find it, and I had to like search around to find it because I always end up here on accident at work. But they seem to have really interesting communities because like the idea is that people can create answers and then you vote on answers,
Oh, okay.
and
Let
so
me yeah, because from the phone, the search bar, because I was looking for a couple, the search bar is not really working when you hit enter. So
yeah, I
let
don't know
me
if they have an app or anything.
because that would be ideal. Stack Exchange, hot question.
They also have another reason I end up on here a lot is there's a whole, I don't know if it's linguistics or what the actual like section is called, but like origins of words. There's a specific word for that.
Yeah,
Ha!
it's like
Funny.
etymology, something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
I probably mispronounced that, but because I always that's one of those words that I like always read it. I don't actually know
Yeah,
how it's
yeah.
pronounced. Might be like etiology or something. I don't
What
know.
is it? I don't remember. Is it? I don't know. But there's one of those where like we again at work for whatever reason, maybe it's because we don't actually work. A lot of times you end up like looking up like where did this word even come from, and you end up here where somebody has some ridiculous answer. A lot of times it's because I think when people are working on like dissertations or PhDs, they're frequently on sites like this asking questions.
Yeah.
But those same people get excited whenever somebody asks a question that they happen to be studying. So they're just like massive knowledge dump on this person. And so a lot of times you look up something and there's one answer that's like 8 paragraphs long on why, we put D in front of escalation to say that it's down, like.
Yeah. It's interesting.
It's really fun, especially whenever it's distracting you from work.
Yeah, I'm gonna look through this more because it's I'm kind of a little sidetracked at it. I'm gonna see if there's an app real quick.
Yeah, you need to close the tab down for us to keep going.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it looks like there's an app.
I think this podcast is slowly becoming Charlie finds things to distract Dan throughout his life.
Stack Exchange, got it. Downloading it. Okay, let's move on.
Was there anything else you want to talk about with Reddit?
Oh no, yeah. So far, it's kind of interesting because like, especially when you're part of a big subreddit community that where there's like tons of fans of this particular author because he's pretty big. It's kind of cool because that if you post something, you'll get some responses.
Yeah, that's what some of the podcasts I like are like.
Yeah, the only learning curve that I was frustrated with at first was different subreddits will have different like rules, and this one was kind of complex because the way that this one worked is it's a book community where there's a bunch of interlinked series, and so they have spoiler tag rules for it, which makes sense, but
Oh, right.
they're kind of complicated. So like for instance, there are, let me think, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 5 different series at the moment with 4 more or 5 more yet to be released. And within each of those 5 series, there's probably a total of 1, 2, 5, 6, 8, about 13 books, something like that. And so so depending on what you're doing, you spoiler tag the series, or you spoiler tag a specific book within the series, or you spoiler tag all, which
That
gives you a
makes
free
sense.
pass, or spoiler tag. Yeah, so it's actually really cool, especially
I imagine like Star Wars. I'm not part of a Star Wars subreddit, but I imagine that's similar where it's like, okay, you might be caught up on this TV show, but you probably haven't read this book, but you've seen these movies. So you need like different levels of spoiler tags, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, and it's actually really kind of nice because there was one question that I asked based off of something that happened in a book that I had read recently, and I had done all the proper tagging with it once I figured that out, and someone responded, and they're like, "Well, I'm pretty sure it's this, and this is what's going on, but there might be also this, which would be spoiling past your tag." And so he put a tag within like the second half of his comment that like covered a couple other books,
Oh,
some of which I
yeah.
haven't read. So it was kind of cool because I could read his initial answer, and I just skipped whatever he said after that. So
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. That's cool that there's like a even within comments that exist. I don't know if I guess
yeah.
I have run across that. I just haven't really noticed it.
Yeah, because the type of group I'm following is obviously very different than
Right,
what a lot
right.
of people
Yeah.
might be doing on Reddit, but because it's a book and series community. But yeah, so far it's been an interesting experience.
Cool. Well, I'm glad I could find a new way to keep you from getting the things done you need to get done.
I'd have to get on it eventually anyway, so it's better I familiarize myself with it now.
According to my stats, there might be somebody today, which is while Hurricane Irma is hitting Florida that downloaded an episode of our podcast and might be actually listening to us talk about water towers during a hurricane.
It may be a friend of mine from someone on Facebook, like that's in a group.
I would love to hear from somebody. Well, first I'd like to hear that they're okay.
Right.
But that would be pretty fascinating to hear that somebody was trying to pass the time bunkered in their home listening to us talk about total nonsense.
Yeah, definitely. I think, I think if it is that person, they were leaving, but yeah, maybe it was someone just completely new that was just like, hey, let's world's gonna end. We need to get on that A-Town podcast.
Yes,
finally.
exactly.
It's like A-Town was like that thing that they were setting aside and treasuring for the moment when they needed it most.
Right, right.
That was it.
Our docile tones are soothing somebody through a great trial.
So if you made it through, welcome to the other side, my friend, whoever you are. So there was a new big video game. Not like the biggest in the world, but it's pretty big because it's a very roundly played game.
I'd say it's pretty close to up at the top of like AAA games. It doesn't get a whole lot bigger than a Bungie video game, right?
Yeah, so Destiny 2 came out last week. They released it, I think, on Wednesday night for to try and they wanted to space out any potential like overload for like opening weekend to kind of try as best as they could to compensate with like servers and stuff like that.
Right,
because,
right.
I remember when the first weekend where the first one came out, there's like a big anticipation about it. In the opening weekend, there's a lot of like server crash issues and stuff, which happens a lot of times.
Yeah, that's never a good look.
Yeah, it's not good, but I've noticed more and more, like, especially when new consoles started coming out, that happened a lot. And I think like companies are just now starting to adjust and anticipate that a little better.
Well, so part of the problem is, games are more and more reliant on internet components. And it's really costly to have a massive amount of infrastructure. And so it's like, do you set yourself up in a way that is as costly as it is for the first weekend?
Yeah.
Or do you sort of try to like weather the storm as much as you can for that weekend, but like build your thing for, peaks, yes, but peaks after that first weekend when you're going to get the most users as you're ever going to get.
Yeah, and that is what's weird, which is kind of why when a lot of other people are just like, you get online and if something crashes, you'll just see people flipping out and cussing at like companies and stuff. And I kind of get the frustration, but to me, like this weekend, like I said, when me and Nick were playing, he had an error code and it wasn't a big deal, but it booted him out of a game twice and he had to get back in. So I understand that frustration, but I almost kind of gave it like a pass because I was just like, because we were like, oh, well, it's opening weekend. It's Destiny 2. It's a big game. So we'll experience that for the first 1 or 2 weekends that we play anyway.
Yeah, it's a little less forgiving when it's a giant studio like that.
Right.
But still somewhat. But it's definitely, you see a lot of like smaller indie devs, especially ones when it's their first title and they maybe weren't even expecting that big of a user base that
right.
They just get slammed and they don't have like the PR teams or the support teams to try and like put out the fires on the PR side because they're too busy trying to get their servers up and running. And so sometimes their reputation can just get totally thrashed for a while. It takes a while for them to recover.
It seems like Bungie, though, is really on top of stuff.
Oh, yeah. Well, they have a giant budget.
Yeah, and they're still having some issues here and there, as I read earlier with that like Twitter update that they released. But the fact that they're very interactive on Twitter, they're like, hey, we're tackling this immediately. This problem showed up. We're getting on it. And the fact that they anticipated and purposely chose to release early in like the middle of the week to try
right
and curb some of this off. Like they knew what they were getting into in advance. So
Did they do any of
um,
the like stress test like demo things beforehand that have kind of become really popular?
yeah, they did a beta, and that was part of it.
Yeah,
Beta,
that's
I think, ended a couple weeks ago. But yeah, and so it's pretty cool. As far as the game itself, it's definitely, now I can't say much because I'm not too far into it.
yeah.
Like,
Just give us like a quick little review.
yeah, so a lot of people will just run through the entire thing first weekend. We have not done that. I've probably played for maybe about 5 hours total, and we just did various things. So we've done the Crucible stuff, which is the multiplayer. We've done some basic patrol stuff, which they call it something else now.
Have you've been
Played
playing pretty much multiplayer with?
Yeah, we weren't playing multiplayer as in like the games. We were playing multiplayer as in like the patrol.
I mean, like you were playing together.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha.
And so they immediately, one of the things that I noticed was front and center was a very central story, which is a massive improvement over the last one, because I'm one of those apologists of the last game, and I really think most people kind of liked it, but it definitely had some issues when Destiny 1 first came out. And I remember one of the weird things about it was it never really felt like it had a strong central story. Not that it didn't clearly have a mythology, because it had this like really deep, complex like world building and mythology.
Yeah, my understanding from just what I've been reading and stuff was that it had a really deep lore that they clearly spent a lot of time on, but the
Yeah.
game didn't really take you through that. You sort of had to find it yourself, and a lot of it was even
Yeah.
like outside of the game online and stuff.
Right. Yeah, they're like, you always get these things, and I still to this day don't know exactly what they are, but they're called like Grimoire cards. And I guess it's like something where it's like, hey, go check this out on Bungie.com, and it tells you about, I think it has
Yeah,
something to do with the
which is
lore.
not aren't it's just too clunky of a system to kind of keep up with.
Right. Even that's like the worst way to do world building. Like, even doing a tie-in book series would have been a better choice than, hey, go check out these individual things on
Well,
our.
so I'll say I think that those are really good ways to do world building, but not a very bad primary way.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like a lot of this stuff needed to be primary, and
Right.
that's a good
Cuz like
point.
there's a lot of games that have really good lore, or I hear it's really good lore. I'm too lazy to do all that. But like
Right.
a lot of people really like finding story elements inside of games that aren't necessarily front and center, because it makes,
Well,
it makes everything feel more lived in and everything.
I think Halo 2 is a great example of like really good world building that was like front and center. Like,
Yeah, well, and that was a very like cinematic game too.
yeah, true, but see, that's what I think this was missing. You can still have all these like MMO and experimental things that they're wanting to do, and still have that, which is what they did better in this new video game. Because you immediately, it opens with the tower, which is like the social port in the first game that you always go to get gear and stuff. It has it being invaded by this new like big bad, if you will, and it's awesome. And you like fight through the torn tower, and like at night in a thunderstorm, and it's just absolutely amazing and really thrilling to play through, which you never really got that in the first game. Well, I say that you got that in the expansions, but that was after they sort of realized like, oh, people want a central story, so they kind of made
Gotcha.
things more
But
cinematic.
it was
So
sort of added on. It wasn't necessarily part of the central theme, at least not at
exactly,
first.
right. Because the first storyline, I couldn't really tell you what it was. It was something to do with the raids, but I didn't never really play the raid until months after it came out, when I finally got a team together. And
So you
so like
you have to have like friends to play with to go through the storyline in this game.
sometimes, whenever it's like bigger stuff like the raid, like you can technically, I guess, beat the game without having played the raid. But that's the thing is, it didn't have a strong enough story in the first one that I could even remotely recall what it was about.
Hmm.
Whereas in this one, it's straightforward. This guy has come in, he's taken over stuff, he's kidnapped this person that called the
The
Traveler,
princess.
who's like, no, well, it's a guy in this case
Right,
that,
right.
like, I guess he's the one that kind of is some sort of emissary to how we get all of our powers and stuff. So, It's very interesting. Like it's the guy feels very Darth Vadery. Like they're like these big space turtles. So he's not completely visually the same because they're bigger and bulkier enemies. But in the game they're called the Cabal, but we call them space turtles. But because they look like huge
The
mutant ninja
Cabal.
turtles. But
Is that
yeah,
like some developer who really hated COBOL, just making a whole enemy in a
prob
game based on a language he doesn't
probably.
like? Do they scream a lot?
No, they're very deep voice. They were, in fact, they remind me a lot of the brutes in Halo 2 and 3. But so they're like kind of the new enemy, and there's a main villain that has like a face mask thing over his mouth that reminds me a lot of Darth Vader. And
So is this one similar to, like, are they keeping with the same thing that they did with the first one, where it's sort of a like living game, like they're going to keep coming out with
yes,
sort
yeah,
of add-ons, but they're not really add-ons as much as just a continuation of the same game?
absolutely. So like they already have season passes up. So I think like the first one will come out around Christmas.
Why is this Destiny 2 and not just Destiny the next edition that adds a bunch of stuff?
I think it's because they did change. I'm not a video gamer or programmer, so correct me with the terminology, but I'll say like they definitely like are doing. They made a new game, so it wouldn't
Right, but
completely
why did
interact.
they? That's what I'm getting at. Wasn't the original thing supposed to be like, this is an MMORG or however you say that for a console?
Yeah,
It's a
yeah,
game that's going to last for a decade.
that was a little confusing at first because I think a lot of people now in fairness, they never said there won't be a second game. They just said, "Well, we have like 10 years of this planned out," is what they said. And I think a lot of people took that, saw that they were making expansions and ran with it and just thought, "Oh, cuz Destiny 2 is just going to be just another expansion of this first game." And then but I don't think they ever really said that. I think that was a lot of people just guessing, and myself included. And I do still think that that's something worth doing, but I also understand the need to like start from the ground up and do like make like a new physics
Yeah.
engine, if you will.
I
And
mean, personally, I prefer just new games.
yeah,
But
yeah,
part of that is, it's if you're coming into it new, it's better to just like start out fresh with everybody else. It's kind of annoying to come into something that has a decade of like history behind it.
right. So so yeah, I like it, and and yeah, it has good opener stuff to that point for people that had maybe never played the first one or jumping in for the first time. It kind of because part of the
You're not
opening
totally
story,
lost.
yeah, because part of the opening story is that that your tower has been attacked and all the powers that you had from the first game are gone. And so you have to like you the first few levels you're like fighting to like find this thing out in space where you can at least kind of temporarily get back some of what you
Hmm.
had. And so it kind of starts you with nothing with just a pistol and gets you up to kind of what people are used to in the first game. So it does it pretty quickly so that people that have played the first game nonstop and know what it is can quickly get that stuff back. But it also um, kind of eases in new players as well. So I think it does a good job doing that. And from what I've seen from like official review websites, it seems like mostly like I looked at like a roundup from like all the big sites like IGN and like all those different stuff. And it seems like for the most part, people are saying positive things. At this point, like almost all the reviews are reviews in progress, which is sort of typical now for like longer games like this.
Yeah, I just looked it up. Metacritic has it at 84 right now.
Yeah, that's probably
So
fair.
that's pretty good. I think that's better than the first one. I think the first one was one of those deals where it had pretty low compared to expectations reviews at first, and then
Yeah.
it's kind of critical reception has increased as they've made improvements over time.
Right. Yeah, the first one was kind of like I loved the first one immediately, but I did feel like it was lacking that strong central story. Um, but it was more just like it was an incredible gameplay experience. But yeah, it definitely had its bugs and problems.
And
And
that's always
so,
been Bungie's like bread and butter is they just execute so well. Like the mechanics and
Yeah.
the like actual specifics of good gameplay, they just like are one of the best in the industry, from what I understand.
Yeah, it's really easy to just that's one of the games that we typically me and friends like jump into as well because it's easy to just jump into and not have to think too much. And that's not to say that it's a dumb game, but just that it's very accessible, if that makes sense.
Right. So you're playing that on the Xbox?
Oh, yeah, playing it on Xbox One, which is slowly becoming a thing of the past, I feel like.
Yeah, that's a whole really interesting topic that I'd be interested in getting into. I don't know if you are.
Oh yeah, sure. I like Xbox. I've always preferred Xbox. I'm not one of those like hardline stance people though. Like I
You're
if
not
I
like a
had money,
fanboy that's defending them, but
right.
that's whose platform you've basically been on since
Yeah,
the first
I'm
Xbox, right?
I'm familiar with it and it has some of the exclusive games I like playing. So we used to play a lot of Gears of War 2 and a lot of the Halo games and so far you can still only get those on the Xbox One. So
Right.
that's why I stuck with it. And because I'm not a huge hardcore gamer, it never really bugged me when, or sorry, it never enticed me when people would say, like, well, there's like X amount of more games on this system. And it's like, yeah, there is, but I'm not going to have time to play them. And these are the couple that I play and they're only on Xbox One.
Right.
And at the time, I think Titanfall was like that too. That was that was an Xbox exclusive. I don't remember whether Titanfall 2 was. I think that went out for all systems this go round.
Was
But
Titanfall on Xbox? Oh, I guess it was Xbox. It was Xbox console exclusive, but it was on
yeah.
PC too.
Oh yeah, okay. So I'm not too hardline about it. Like if I had the money to drop on a PlayStation 4 or Nintendo Wii, whichever the Switch,
Nintendo Switch.
right. Yeah, if I had some like money for those as well and time, I definitely would buy one, but I just don't have the time right now and honestly, if I were to get another system next, it would probably be the Switch because I feel like that's the most different. But overall, like my issue with Xbox is I'm unlike the people that play PlayStation and think it's just trash. I don't think it's trash. I think it's a very good system. The problem is they're not doing I feel like they're not doing anything unique. Like you brought up to me over the summertime when the E3 stuff happened. You're like, yeah, I was really expecting them to do something about like their VR stuff, and it was just nothing. It was just all about this like new Scorpion or whatever they're calling it now. Which
You're talking about
that's
Xbox.
yeah.
Okay, I
Yeah,
thought
so
you were
like
still on PlayStation.
no. So they're coming out with that like new super powerful Xbox,
Right.
which honestly that's awesome. Like it looks like it's going to be everything they're saying it's going to be. But the problem is it's like
Why would you buy one? Like what reason would you have to even care?
I don't have any incentive even as an Xbox user
Right.
because
You don't have a 4K TV, right?
Right.
And even if you had one, how much of a difference are you really going to notice unless you get a really big one? And then you aren't somebody who's super concerned about like frame rate or anything, right?
Right.
So other than those two things, what are you really getting? I mean, there's other things I understand, like draw distance and stuff, but
I've used this metaphor before. It's basically the bone density scanner of the console world.
yeah,
To take a reference from Pursuit of Happiness. It's this really cool thing that does stuff a little bit better, but it's not enough of an enticement or need for anyone to really like go out and grab
right.
it in droves.
When you can get you can get an Xbox for much cheaper. Xbox One for much cheaper that can play all the same games, right? There's no
Right.
like every game that comes out for the Xbox One. We're talking about the Xbox One X, right? Is that what it's called?
Yeah, that's right. Which
The
name
Super
was cool.
Xbox.
Yeah, the naming was really cool.
Well,
but,
so are you talking about the Scorpio name?
No. The new Xbox name because something like the acronym like spells Xbox like because of how they named it.
Oh,
And it's
clever.
kind of cool.
So
Yeah.
like the Xbox One X isn't going to get games that come out just for it. That's my understanding anyway.
hmm
So like why would you have any desire to buy one?
None, and that
Unless you're somebody who really cares about
right.
But
And
if
we
you were one of
know-
those people, you're probably just gonna get a PC, right? Gaming PC.
Yeah. If you're getting to levels where it's as expensive or as technical as using a computer, then just do that.
Right. Like that was why I was expecting, because Microsoft has a partnership with Oculus
Yeah.
that makes the Oculus Rift, as well as Microsoft has I don't know if you've seen the HoloLens, but they have a whole AR is what it's called.
Yeah.
But they have their own, actually, they have a whole VR thing that they just started too. They're in that space, and they just made a super powerful console that to me didn't really scream I need this for like a traditional gamer who's going to have a
Yeah. It's
console. But what I thought was all of this power is to give you a full VR experience, and that in your living room. And I feel like
yeah.
that is super compelling. And I cannot believe that they didn't do that. And I still feel like that's got to be coming.
Well, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Like, it's not too late to pull themselves out of the water here. I just feel like it's a couple, and it's not even that. I mean, if people are honest, there's nothing wrong with the Xbox. Like, it's a great system, unless you're just like
Well,
a
there is one thing
fanboy.
wrong, but I can get into
Oh,
that if you
we can
want.
get in a second, but my point is, it's not like PS like I constantly have seen like videos where people will where they're like professional game reviewers on like YouTube or something. They'll talk about a game and they'll do like the side by side and they'll say like this is what it looks like on all three systems and the PC.
Right.
And for the people that brag that like, oh, the PS4 is so much better than the Xbox, it really isn't. There's not that much of a difference at all. Like if you watch the stuff in
There's
like
people that
1080p
will
and
notice and that do
yeah,
care, but not for most people that get a console. It's for the simplicity. They don't necessarily
yeah.
care that much about those nitty gritty details.
So all of these systems are great in their own ways, and even Xbox is. My problem is just that it seems like the last few years they're not necessarily taking any steps backwards, but they're not really doing anything to take too many steps forward either. And that's what's annoying is, like you said, they have partnerships or with companies or within company, like they're working on these things, and they're just not doing anything. So hopefully they can, like the next E3. I don't know if they can really like pull this out another year. Like they need to come out with something big this next year and say like, "Oh, here's our new VR thing," and
Right. They can
this
attach it to
is
the existing console, the to the Xbox itself, or at least the
right.
Xbox One X, whatever it's called.
Yeah,
But like it needs to be something new. And what I was referring to earlier, their one problem, or I should say their two problems, but their one problem really is user base.
hmm.
Like it's not a technical problem, but it's they are behind the PlayStation in market share by a decent amount,
Yeah,
to the point where if you're a developer and you're looking at where am I going to release this, you're way more likely to say, you know what, I'm just going to target PS4, get a little bit of money from them for being exclusive to them, and I'm targeting the platform that has the most people.
right,
And so what that causes is a games problem. And so Xbox doesn't have the same game selection that PlayStation does.
right.
And then compounding on that, especially, which is probably the biggest problem that they're really having, is the thing that usually drives console sales is exclusives. And like their exclusives have been just totally down, like way
Right.
down. I don't even know. Like I think they're
Yeah,
releasing like two this year or something.
they just have those original ones that I mentioned, which
No, but
those are
that's my
big.
point. Those are way
Yeah.
behind. Like they keep delaying their big
Oh,
hitters.
gotcha.
Like Crackdown 3 has been
Yeah.
delayed multiple years. And that's the type of thing that sells a console. Because
Right.
if you have a PlayStation, like you're just going to buy the PlayStation version of every game, but like a Halo or a Gears of War or a Crackdown, those are the
Right.
types of things that sell systems. And they haven't had really anything like that in a while, like since Halo 5 or whatever, which was multiple
Right.
years ago.
hmm
And so,
Yeah. Yeah. Both Destiny 1, which was not exclusive. So yeah, just Halo 5 was 2 years ago, I think.
right. Now, I'm sure there's examples of plenty of exclusives, but those heavy hitters
hmm
are the thing that they like their internal development has been struggling. They also had
Well, they got Gears of War,
I
which is
forgot what it
kind
was
of big.
called. They had one somewhat recently that was decently hyped and ended up being a big disappointment.
Hmm.
I can't remember what it's called. Some sort of platformer or something.
Gotcha.
But yeah, like that's the thing. They've just been struggling. Now, I should say, you are obviously a somewhat biased party just because you're on the Xbox platform, but I don't feel like you have
Yeah, absolutely.
like you don't really have much skin in the game. That just happens to be what you own. But
Right.
I'm a total Nintendo person. Like I've owned
The new one's
an
great.
Xbox in the past, but
It
I've pretty
was
much always been on the Nintendo platform, and so I feel like I'm almost completely separated from the war between Xbox
yeah.
and Sony, which is fun. I personally really like following it and reading about it because I just enjoy watching different industries and how businesses do things, and I like technology, so like video game companies are something I just like following.
I feel like Nintendo did a really good like they kind of knocked it out of the park with this latest
Oh
one,
my
didn't they?
gosh, yeah. This one is doing incredible.
Like both sales and performance, right?
Yes. It's basically a actual realization of what I think they were trying to do with the Wii U, but
Yeah.
couldn't quite get there. And that one just tanked. Like that was a huge sort of failure.
Yeah, I remember not even realizing it came out, seeing it at the store one day and
Yeah.
going like, "Oh, is that some like super version of the Wii?" And they're
Well,
like,
so that right there is another part of that was it was a marketing thing. Calling it the Wii U, people that owned a Wii were just like, "Oh, like I already have one. I don't need another one of those."
right.
So just changing the name was probably a big improvement. But the main thing is they genuinely did something special as far as hardware on this one. Like
Yeah.
they've always been the sort of underpowered but use it well company, but now they have a really good excuse for being underpowered, and it's not being cheap, it's portability
Yeah.
and being able to play a big AAA game because like because it's selling so well, third parties are actually coming back, and so the Switch is going to get like FIFA and
Yeah.
NBA 2K, whatever year it is,
Yeah.
and a lot of these like big. I think Rockstar even just announced they were coming out with. They're doing a big re-release of one of their games. It's L.A.
Hmm.
Noir. I don't know if you ever played that one,
Oh, okay. I know
but one
that.
of those big AAA open world games, and it's coming out on the Switch same day as the other two platforms.
Yeah.
It probably won't look as good, but like, who cares? You can have
Yeah.
it on, you can have it in your lap just playing it or on a bus playing it, but then you can also
Yeah.
still plug it into your TV and play it like a traditional game. And that has just been super
And
effective.
I'm very happy that that it seems like they've been doing so well because I remember like back when it first like released, I sent you like a video because apparently people were having like some freezing issues, but it seems like that was sort of like a false alarm. Like whatever that problem was. I mean, there were some issues near the release, but it looked like that wasn't really as big of a deal as people thought it would be.
Yeah, I there was a bunch of things people were afraid of happening. Like
Yeah.
there was reports of like warping and stuff like that, but none of those really seemed to be. Oh no, there was the one of the controllers had like a syncing issue,
Ah,
and actually
gotcha.
mine ended up having it, but I sent it to him and they sent it back in like a couple
Yeah.
days for free, and it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't like the red ring of death on the Xbox
Right, right.
360.
Yeah, and I watched and we played the Zelda game for a little bit, and that was absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
And
I
so,
mean that's probably going to get game of the year. Well, that's what's
really,
crazy too is there's a Mario game coming out, and some of the early previews of it, people are saying that might get game of the year. So they might have two contenders for game of the year
is
as
that
exclusives on their new system, which is kind of like crazy.
is the new Mario game going to be kind of like Mario 3D, like the old Nintendo 64 one
Yeah,
or
yep. It's like the
Mario
Nintendo
64?
64 one. It's not side
That's
scrolling,
cool.
it's a 3D one. And it's weird. Have you seen the trailer for it?
I feel like I've seen some like GIFs and stuff like that on Twitter, but not really
It's
much
like
else.
Nintendo's one of those companies, kind of like Pixar, where I get excited when I hear an idea or see what they're doing and think, that is too weird. This I can't imagine how this is going to succeed. Because when they do that, it tends to be something more special, if that makes
Hmm.
sense. And
Yeah.
this one is like the thing I saw at least was it was like an open world like New York City looking thing. Like there's taxis driving around
Yeah.
and there's like people walking around. It just looked weird. It's like a big open world kind of thing, but
Huh.
with Mario and like, your typical platforming stuff.
Yeah, that could be interesting.
Yeah,
If you get
I'm
it, I'd love to
excited.
come over and play it.
Yeah, or I could come over there and just bring it and we could play it. That's
Right,
what's so
exactly.
cool.
I just wanted to ask you what your thoughts are, if you have any feelings whatsoever on the fact that like TV shows now like are starting to do these like 2-year schedules. And it's not like it's never been done before, but I feel like this is the first time I've noticed it with like big prominent shows.
I'm completely unfamiliar with this phenomenon.
Okay, so I'll give you an example. So right now, Game of Thrones season just ended like a couple weeks ago, and the next season, typically how a show works is it'll come out next year, and they'll be
Right.
working on it this year, and it'll come out next year. Well, now they're talking about pushing it back 2 years, so that they have more time to
Interesting.
work on it. I don't know if that's like a funding thing where they get more money for spectacle because it's kind of a big fantasy thing.
Or they're just
And
waiting for what's his name to give him more plot points.
yeah, yeah, it could be that. Like maybe the writer will just will drop a bomb and be like, "Hey, here's both books, and I'm finishing this thing."
Hey, stop getting
Um,
excited about that. It's not going to happen.
it probably won't. There really is reason to think that though, because 2 years ago he was saying, "I'm almost done with book 6," and it is still yet to come out. But that is also completely within the realm of believability that he's
Right.
just not done. So so it really could go either way. I won't be shocked either way. Well, I will be. But so they moved that out 2 years, and for whatever reason, I'm sure it's financial or something like that, where they get more money for it or something. Which is the same reason that this season. I don't know if you noticed, if you knew this part, but Game of Thrones has always been a show where every season is 10 episodes, and this last season they only did 7.
I feel like this is a pretty common thing as shows get older, though, right?
Yeah,
Like I
but
always attributed it to actors getting harder and harder to schedule because as they get more popular, they start having all sorts of other side projects and everything.
that very well could be the case, but Westworld is another example. That first season came out this time last year, and they're foregoing this year second season so that they can work on it and spend
Interesting.
now. And that might also be because Jonathan Nolan is wanting, like maybe he didn't know whether they like, which I doubt, but maybe he didn't know whether it would be as successful as it was, so he didn't plan on immediately jumping into this project again. But he also has like 5 seasons planned out, according to what he said as well. So it's sort of weird that like now he's not the only one on the ticket, obviously, but he was like one of the big writers and like very involved in this
Right.
in Westworld, and they had one very successful season, and they're like, okay, season 2 comes out in 2018, and that was like as of when Westworld ended, like back
Interesting.
in
So that was kind of
what
the
was that,
original
November?
plan then, it seems
Yeah,
like.
yeah. And so I've noticed like these some of these shows are doing that,
Now
and
both of those are HBO, right?
yeah, yeah.
So
And there may be other examples, but I almost feel like it's like this thing where they're starting to treat certain shows as like this like premiere status type thing, like or a prestige. That's what I'm going for.
I will say I feel like that's been especially with Netflix, a lot of times they almost treat these shows as long movies where it's like
Yeah,
we're just going to drop, and Netflix has obviously the advantage of they're dropping them all at once, but
yeah,
a lot of times they're shorter seasons and they're sort of designed to have a
yeah.
zeitgeisty conversation within a couple, like within like a month or something.
Yeah, because you could almost say the Defenders and connected stuff could kind of be in this category, but it is a little different because it's sort of franchising. So that's why I didn't really mention them. But that is sort of a case as well where you'll get Daredevil season 1 this year, then you'll get another one in 2 or 3 years, and then we'll get Daredevil season 3 sometime next year,
But that
which we
almost that
didn't.
feels like a whole different thing because
Yeah,
it's the
yeah,
whole universe.
yeah, exactly. It's franchising into the next, into the next, into the
Right.
next, and
It's almost
building.
weird to
So
hear them called like season 1, season 2
yeah,
because it's
yeah,
like, oh, to me it's just like a continuation of this
yeah, exactly.
like metaverse
The
thing.
microverse.
Microverse. Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good name.
yeah, microcosm. But anyways, So yeah, I just thought it was weird because their movies are like I don't know. Did you this kind of peripherally related? Did you see the news? I think I sent you an article about it. Like they're wanting to like WB, which is just always me face palming and saying, "What are we doing here?" Is wanting to make a Joker movie, and so
I don't know. I feel
they're
like in the
like,
last week there was like three different Joker movie related things, all of which were
yeah, well,
completely
it's
conflicting and extremely like eye rolly.
right, but let's say that this part was correct because it came from a sort like the particular article that I sent you made a little bit of more sense, but it could also be completely wrong. But from what I understand is what Warner Brothers is wanting to do, which there's precedence for this in the
Is
comic book
succeed
world,
finally.
but they're wanting to do both franchise movies and then standalone like prestige films. So this Joker movie that people were talking about, like they were thinking, oh, this is going to be Jared Leto, and then it turned out they're like, oh no, they're courting Martin Scorsese to do like a crime Joker
Oh,
movie.
I just assumed it was Martin Scorsese directing Jared Leto. You're saying that they wouldn't even be part of their like universe?
No,
Oh my gosh.
no, which is right, which is why the rumors were Leonardo DiCaprio, but this one article that I sent you was like there is absolutely nothing solid or concrete in any sort of way that Leonardo DiCaprio is even remotely interested or doing this. It's just that because they got Scorsese potentially and they're courting him, they're hoping they'll get a big name like Leonardo DiCaprio.
My goodness. What a confusing mess.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there's precedence for it in the comic book world, but the comic book world is also a different medium for a reason. So,
Well, and let's be I mean, okay, if Marvel were to do the same thing,
yeah,
I would probably be like, oh, okay, yeah, I can get on board with that. But like, that's because they have an established thing that people
right.
understand.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
DC
saying?
does DC does not yet. It's too early in the game
Yeah,
for
like if
them.
they were to say, "Hey, our like TV show stuff is actually a separate universe or something," right?
Right.
That wouldn't really feel that weird or confusing. But DC does not have this established pedigree or understanding by their fans yet. Or maybe
Right.
by their fans, but by
Yeah, there's a lot of people that'll just be like, "Why did they recast Leo
yeah.
as the Joker
And
and
then
why
like if
doesn't
it
this make
doesn't
sense
it,
with
yeah,
that movie?"
exactly. It's like, is this canon? What is canon?
Right.
Is this what do they even call what do they call their universe? Is it literally
It's
the
the DCEU.
DCEU, the
Yeah,
DC
extended universe.
extended universe? Okay.
Yeah.
Why is it extended?
No clue.
Okay. So the DCEU, it's like it wouldn't be part of that.
Yeah, right. Right, it would
It's
not be.
so weird.
Yeah, which is why I'm glad like for instance one of their other properties which was Shazam was kind of also in a confusing spot too because like they sold its rights to The Rock and which I was super honestly I was
That's
super
great.
excited about
Yeah,
cuz he was
no.
going to play the villain and it was like really cool and it was like there was like in this weird time where it's like well because they were like billing it as part of like these are our upcoming DC movies coming out, but it wasn't part of the extended universe at the time. And then finally, like The Rock came out and was like, "Yeah, this is going to be part of the DC universe, and there'll be crossovers somehow." So, like, but that's the thing is you're right. Like, it's a marketing issue where it's like, what are I don't understand
Right.
like they need to be clear and they're not so but I brought up them just because like I was saying like kind of with the TV shows like it seems like a lot of companies are trying and maybe this is an experiment and we turn out it's completely wrong it's really simplistic and understandable and 2 years from now everybody's like oh yeah prestige shows and prestige
You're
movies are a
jumping
thing
back to
now
the 2 year scheduling thing.
yeah and so I'm just saying kind of in both mediums it feels like companies are like pushing for now, again, Game of Thrones might be different because it could be actor stuff, but I also feel like it's more like budgetary. Like they like now at this point in the show, they're wanting to do these big like spectacle stuff. And
Right.
so
It just takes more
maybe
time.
yeah, and HBO knows especially in this last season, people will be tuning in and they're not going to lose an audience. So they're like, well, if we hold off another year, could we get more money maybe, or something like that?
Well, and
Now,
there's
that's
there's a
all
whole side industry of Game of Thrones talking. So yeah, I don't think they're going to lose momentum anytime soon.
right. Exactly. Yeah. Like there's a Game of Thrones podcast I listen to, and they actually have like real people that work in the entertainment industry. So like one person is a writer for Vanity Fair, and one
Right.
person just
I
does.
think at least I don't know if it's the same one, but I think that the top or one of the top podcasts on like every list of most popular podcasts or whatever. I don't know how they measure that, but at the very
Any
top is a Game
spoilers?
of Thrones podcast, which is crazy for something that's seasonal.
Yeah.
But they continue it like year round, right?
Yeah, yeah. And they've gotten to the point now where they've turned it into a full-fledged like entertainment podcast because people like listening to them, and whenever the 10 weeks are up every year, they're like, "Well, why don't you
Right.
do this movie or this TV show?" And so now in between they do, which is now the majority of the time, they do single episodes of like just different entertainment things. So yeah, there's a whole cottage industry around all of this stuff. So it's not going anywhere. I was just kind of thinking, like, will it get to the point where if these big shows kind of get us to accept, like, oh, yeah, that's a thing. Like, we get Westworld 1 this year. And because it's like got the production of a movie, it's going to take a couple of years till we get the next 10 episodes. And then do you think new shows could even release that way? Just being like, yeah, here's a new show, and then in a couple of years we'll get around to the next season.
I think so.
Like,
I definitely think so.
yeah, it's just interesting to see like the industry kind of evolving and taking risks.
Yeah, because
To a
I don't
degree.
think this replaces your traditional like schedule, fall show goes into with a break over Christmas and then ends in the spring. I I don't think this replaces that. I think you're still going to have that for your certain types of shows. Like sitcoms and everything will probably run that way for a while. But
Right.
definitely these more well produced, I shouldn't say well produced, but like movie like shows, I think they absolutely could work within that medium. You know what I mean?
I think we could be getting trained even with sitcoms to a degree. I mean, because I think sitcoms, you're right, work better being released on a tighter schedule. But just like shows that are in limbo that Netflix picked up, like people are looking forward to the next season of Arrested
Yeah,
Development.
no,
It's
that's a good
been
point.
5 years since we got the last one that Netflix did,
And
and
it'll
so
be an event show. You know what I mean? It'll
exactly,
come out,
yeah,
everybody will binge watch it, everybody will talk about it in the same way that they do with movies,
right,
and then it'll kind of just enter the sort of lexicon of culture if it's big enough,
right,
or it'll just die out in obscurity. But like it follows that sort of movie cycle.
right,
And I
exactly.
think that's totally fine. Like I like that there's different options. But I think for at least a while until, the TV model is dead, which is a long ways off,
Yeah,
I think you're still going to have your traditional release cycles as well.
yeah, yeah. It's a good point.
And like I think even some streaming companies, I don't think they're all consistent. Like Hulu releases on a weekly cycle whenever they do stuff, right? They don't dump everything like
Yeah, it's
Netflix.
it's a hybrid. So like I think I mentioned this before, but like with their new Handmaid's Tale show, which was pretty big,
Right.
they release 3 episodes at once and then weekly to round out the 10.
Oh, that's a smart. If you're going to do the weekly,
Yeah.
it's smart to drop a bunch at once, yeah.
So they give you enough to binge, yeah, and then they say, okay, now that we got you with 3 episodes, we'll give you one at a time.
Right. It'd be really
So
interesting to see how many people just wait till the last one and then binge watch it.
yeah, yeah,
I guess though, if you get a big enough show, like Game of Thrones clearly is advantaged by the fact that it's weekly. Like that whole cottage
yeah,
industry around it forms because it owns the news cycle on Sunday nights for 10 weeks in a row.
yeah. And then there's some shows that act like that, but I really don't think they're as well received weekly. This would be an argument with anybody else, but you won't care. But like Walking Dead to me is like that. Like it is a show that's
It certainly was,
it's
right?
a huge show. Like last year they beat out NFL Sunday in the ratings at
But
one
I'm
point.
saying it was it had that sort of gravitas around it, at least in the past. I don't
Yeah,
know if it still
yeah,
does. I don't
yeah.
hear people talk about it the way I hear people talk about Game of Thrones anymore.
They changed out a lot of writers like after season 5, and it started getting so like you were having people doing some of the same like risky type episodes that they would do in the previous seasons, but not as good writing.
Right.
And so like it killed the pace a lot of times.
I
Like
feel like
they
most of
would
what I see on that show is people begrudgingly watching it out of like an
yeah.
obligation to finish.
Well the thing is it's actually not bad. It's just knowing what it was. It's sort of frustrating seeing
Okay. Yeah, I
like
could see that.
yeah, like cuz it's
Kind of
still
like
good
Lost.
or yeah, or I wouldn't watch it either. But it is one of those things where it's like you guys are just trying to hit 16 episodes at this point. I would so much rather you do 10 or 13
Right.
than wasting my time with like these double long like retrospective in the past episodes, because that like they'll do that. And the other problem is they do a lot of momentum killer episodes for no good reason. I don't know what the writers are doing sometimes. So like they'll have something like really big and interesting happening, and then they'll end it on a cliffhanger, and then the next episode is an hour and a half backstory of someone, and that episode will be done very well, but it just killed the momentum of the entire season, because now
Right.
people in real time are waiting like 3 or 4 weeks before they find out what happened in that last episode. And so they've just made some weird choices, but it is one of those things where now it still gets amazing ratings, which is why I said it's arguable what I'm saying about that show specifically, but I feel like people people would enjoy it more if they binge watch it, because everybody that I see like say like, "Oh, I just started watching it and I just went through all the stuff on Netflix and it's amazing." Like they're the ones that say that are the ones that just sat and watched 16 episodes in 3 days. It's not the people that watched it week to week to week wondering like, why did we throw this random episode in
Yeah,
here?
because an episode is disappointing if that's all you're getting. But if you know you get to chew on the next one right after that one ends, you're fine with it.
Exactly. So, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens like with the whole industry, because even that show, The Walking Dead that I mentioned, they're getting to a point where a lot of their actors are kind of recognizable and successful now, and AMC is wanting to milk that show for everything they can.
Right. They're going to get all their spin-offs going.
Yeah, and well, even with that show, and that's the thing is like a lot of the main actors are kind of like, well, we're like there's some tension there. Like they don't hate the showrunners or anything. They like doing it because they're getting good money.
But they're kind of ready to try some different things.
Yeah, I think even the kid actor that has kind of grown up and he's a teenager now, I think he's wanting to do other stuff too.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of stuck doing this show every year.
Rough
Because
life.
they're approaching season 8 and trying to renew contracts and stuff like that. Like I think they're wanting to go like 10 seasons or more, which is insane for a
Yeah.
drama. It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out.
For those of you who listen through, if they want to find any of our stuff on the internets, where should they go?
You can comment on Facebook or on the website or on our Reddit page, and all of these are at A-Town FM. No slash or hyphen. Just A-Town FM. If you want to search for us on iTunes, same thing, A-Town FM. Though if you're listening on iTunes, you probably already know that. What is the Reddit? What is the Reddit address? I don't know if that one's.
It's A-Town FM.
Oh,
I mean, it's all Reddit
okay.
all subreddits are reddit.com/r/name of the subreddit. So for us, it's A-Town FM.
Okay, awesome.
But as you would expect, you can search A-Town FM basically anywhere.
And
Also YouTube.
if you are from a state and or country that we have not posted a flag for yet, or you don't see it, let us know, and we'll give a shout out to your wherever you're at, and put up your flag on Facebook and say hey. But yeah, interact with us on any of our forms or mediums. We also have Twitter, A-Town FM. So leave us a comment, leave us a good review if you want to on iTunes. That would be great. So the more the merrier.